Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Sorry it's a little bit later than usual. Got caught up with a few things this morning, but what we're going to be looking at today is one of my monster lenses again. This is the 200-400, and I haven't done a video yet on how well it performs with a mirrorless camera. So we're going to look at this lens here, and I'm going to show you some photos taken with the R3. But when I do my discussions at the end, as I always do, I will talk to you about how this lens performs on the R7 and also the R6 and also the R6 Mark II. So you've got a little bit of the sort of first gen mirrorless, and then into the mid to current gen mirrorless as well. So what we'll do now, got 4 photos to show you. Let's get into those right now. Okay, so this is our first image here of a Jaguar. All these 4 images I'm going to show you right now are taken with the R3 on this lens, just for clarity. This is at 400mm. Jaguars tend to be very hard animals to get locked on with the tracking, just because they've got the rosettes all across them, so the camera gets confused where their eye is or where their head is. But you can see here we've got the Jaguar nicely in focus across the whole of the body, and then the foreground and the background is nicely blurred. And say this is at its extreme at 400mm without the converter on, and say a very nice sharp image from this combo. Next one here is of a little monkey. This is 300mm, so this is mid-range of the camera, locked on the eyes really nicely there. Super sharp image, nothing really wrong at all with this one here. It just shows you how sharp the lens is on that sort of mid-range part of its focal point, just so you can tell it's sharp from start to finish. Next one here is of a leopard. This is at 200mm, and the reason why I've used this here, because there's a lot of distraction in this photo. There's a lot of greenery, there's a lot of plants, foliage, and the eye tracking actually picked up the leopard's eye at 200mm. I'm quite far away, shooting through wire on a very rainy day, and still got a nice, very usable, very natural looking image here of the leopard surveying its sort of enclosure, just to work out what's going on, where its food is. But I was very impressed with how sharp the leopard is, considering, say, so many distractions. And sometimes with, like I've seen with the R7, it'll jolt around a little bit trying to find the animal, but say nicely where it needs to be with this one. Final image here is another leopard, but this is an Almere leopard. Taking this one here because this was incredibly low light and through glass at this Almere leopard, and again, as you can see, the focus is absolutely bob on, straight on the eyes. This was at 340mm, so a little bit more towards the top end, and just really usable, really happy with it. Colours are really nice as well. There's a bit of light that's sort of come through the tree sort of lining onto her as she's walked around this corner, but it is an incredibly dark enclosure in the winter, so you've got no issues there with ISO or anything because of the R3 performing how it should. But again, shows you can get a very nice sharp image shooting through glass as well with this lens. Now, as you can see from the images, you can still get an incredibly sharp lens. This is technically even still a current lens. You can buy this brand new for £13,999, I believe it is, in the UK. I paid £3.50 for my copy, and yeah, it's got a few marks on it, but nothing crazy. This is the ultimate telephoto lens, zoom lens that Canon offer. I've already done videos comparing it to the 100-400 and stuff like the Sigma 150-600, so if you're kind of interested more in that and seeing why, if it's worth paying the extra money, then go check out those videos in my library of collection of videos I've got going currently. But this lens itself, it will depend which mirrorless camera you've got, if I would recommend using it or not. Now, if you've got an R3 or an R6 Mark II, no problems at all. A current generation, professional level mirrorless camera, you're not going to find any issues with it. The image quality is going to be absolutely sublime, as it were. You're going to get really nice fast focusing, especially with the R3. It just drives it really, really nicely. And even with the 1.4 converter on, you still get a really nice driving lens and a really nice quick autofocus, and with the eye tracking as well. As you go to the older mirrorless cameras, so like the R6 for example, there is a slight noticeable difference in the autofocus quality compared to the R6 Mark II and the R3. It is slightly slower. It's not unusable by any form of the imagination. It's still incredibly usable. You just do have that little bit of lag, and it will say it's focused on something as it's tracking it. You'll look back at the photos and you might be slightly out of focus from where you thought you would be, or where the tracking box showed you were. So that's there. With the R7, it's noticeable again from the R6. So if you've got an R7, I'd probably, to be honest, with the testing as I've got more and more kit, my opinion slightly changed the R7, where I thought it was actually working quite well with quite a lot of these sort of older telephoto lenses. But the more I've tried it with newer Canon R cameras, the more I kind of feel that camera is designed really to be used mainly with lighter weight lenses. So the 100-400 works absolutely fine. It's way lighter. The glass is way smaller, way thinner than this lens here, and it drives that really well. When you look at this lens, the 500mm, the 300mm I've got, it is very slow at focusing in comparison to something like the R6, the R6 Mark II and the R3. That camera does benefit from you using, I believe, an RF mounted lens rather than an EF converted lens. It will still work. You're just going to have to accept you're going to have that slower autofocus, and because of that you are going to miss shots. Now, this is obviously a very expensive lens. Most people are going to be buying it are going to be already having like an R5, an R6 Mark II, an R5 Mark II on order, or an R3. But I didn't when I started. I had the R7. I moved from the 1DX series to the R7 to test out mirrorless. Moved on to the R6 very quickly because I found the R7 wasn't hitting the targets I kind of thought a mirrorless camera should. Found those targets on the R6, absolutely loved that camera, and then moved up to the R3 so I could permanently use a mirrorless camera rather than always having to rely on having a 1DX, which I was still doing, Mark II, with me with certain lenses, because the 1DXs still drive these old lenses way nicer than an R6 and R7 ever could, because they're proprietary, they're designed to go on there. They've got the bigger batteries to help drive the motors, which means they can move that heavier, bigger lens quicker, glass quicker. So would I recommend this lens if you're using mirrorless? Yes and no. Only if you're using something like an R6 Mark II. If you're using an R6 but you don't mind, you're going to have to accept that you're going to miss some photos, because you just are. An R3, an R5 Mark II. I haven't used it with an R5 Mark I because I haven't ever used one, so I can't comment on that. Maybe if someone who's watching this video has this lens and has used it with an R5, maybe leave a comment and let us know what your thoughts are and how you're finding that working. But for me personally, I've not used that combination, so I can't comment on it. If you've got an R7, an R10, anything sort of that lower end sort of entry level mirrorless camera from Canon, then don't bother. You're better off getting something like 100-400, which has got a lighter glass, a lighter lens, and then the R7 will be able to drive those motors better than it can on this, and you'll get a way better imagery and you'll miss less shots from that. So, but for me, I've got the 1DXs, I've got the R3, works absolutely perfectly fine. At some point I do want to add an R5 to the collection, because I've never had a high megapixel camera. The highest megapixel I had was the R7. Before that was my 1DX Mark II, it's 20 megapixels. And now I've got 24 with the R3. I don't have that high megapixel camera for when I'm taking an animal portrait or taking photos of the moon I do quite often, or landscape stuff, you want that high megapixel camera. So once I get the R5, I will retest with some of the lenses I've got and let you guys know from my experience compared to like the cameras that I've used and I have access to still, what I think that R5 is. So as I said, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you have the R5, let me know how it works with this lens. Let everyone else know how it works with the lens. It's a community we're building here. It's always good for everyone to have their input. And if you enjoyed the video, obviously do what you always do. Put a thumbs up on there, like the video. Comment always helps. Everything you can do to engage with the video always helps grow the channel. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.